Resuming debate, the honourable member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member from Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle for introducing this bill. I want to thank her for her efforts to right a wrong in our court system with her bill that will ensure that we educate judges on domestic violence and coercive control. And most importantly, I want to tell her that she has the support of the Member of Parliament for Thornhill and members on this side of the House. Madam Speaker, I want to share the story of Kira. I want to share the story of Jennifer, her mother, Philip, her stepfather, and her baby brother. I want to share the story of her family, of her friends, of her community. I want to share the story of Jen and Phil's pleas for Kira's safety in the face of well-documented, known, and proven coercive control and abuse in our court system. Kira was whip-smart, rambunctious, and a beautiful 4-year-old whose family was from Thornhill and whose life was stolen by an angry father who killed himself and Kira just over 2 years ago. Kira should be playing with her friends. She should be making her parents proud. She should be protecting her little brother. This was entirely preventable. Kira should be 7 years old. Instead, today, Kira is a statistic in a broken system that failed her. She is a court file number of those who didn't know what they were looking for. Madam Speaker, she is anything but. She is a daughter, a granddaughter, a big sister, a friend, a neighbor. She was so many things. She was an entire world of light, and her death was entirely preventable. Kira should be 7 years old. Madam Speaker, I cannot begin to imagine the heartbreak and the pain of the Kagan family. Kira's mother, Jen, and stepfather, Phil, in addition to being busy parents, a busy doctor and a busy lawyer, respectively, both have become full-time advocates for changes to the court system to educate judges on domestic violence and coercive control. That's where this bill came from. And while nothing will bring back their daughter, they are on the front lines of ensuring that what happened to Kira will never happen to another child in this country again. That is a tremendous responsibility. For victims of domestic abuse, their struggle to protect themselves and their children is a petrifying reality. Parents place their trust and their faith in family courts to provide child protection. And they would likely believe that decision makers in the system are making decisions from a place of knowledge and appropriate training. It should have never been up to Jen and Phil to plead with judges to show them what they needed to see. Madam Speaker, if you want to be an accredited mediator in this province, you have to do 21 hours of mandatory domestic violence training, and you have to update that training every year for 5 years. But judges don't. If judges were properly trained in understanding what violent family situations look like, if they knew what they were looking for, they would have been properly equipped to ensure Kira's life would have been saved. Jen's cry for action as a mother resonated in my community and in communities across the country. Jen and Phil did the work, and now it's up to members of this House to show them that their work and their courage to share their story will be the legacy of a painful journey they will always know. This was entirely preventable. Kira should be 7 years old. Madam Speaker, I speak to Kira's parents often, and even more, I speak to our mutual friends whose children loved Kira. I want to leave you with a sense of the impact of Kira's death on her friends. Zach is 7 years old. He said, "I really, really miss Kira bad, and I hope she will be still alive today, and I'm really sad she did die. She really liked to play with dogs. I like to go on trips with her to fun places with her, and I like to have meals with her, and I'd like to do a lot of things with her, and I miss her every single day." Ben, who's 9, said Kira was like a little cousin to me. She always acted like a little girl and a little boy at the same time, which was very cool. We would go swimming and do a lot of fun stuff, and we would make lots of noise in the hallway of her condo. She was funny, crazy, and fun, and I really miss Kira. Taylor's 7. She said she missed the play dates with Kira and that she knows that they would have been best friends. She asked if she could celebrate Kira's birthday, and her mother had an extra cupcake for Kira. These are just a few of the quotes and the stories from a whole community that's affected by this. And children, 7 or 9, should never have to cope with death of one of their friends. This was entirely preventable. Kira should be 7 years old. Madam Speaker, there are so many Canadians who are currently experiencing domestic violence at the hands of a parent or at the hands of their partner. Domestic violence leaves scars, it breaks people, it silences them. Children are not just exposed to domestic violence, they experience it. And children who experience domestic violence have higher rates of mental health issues, of anxiety, of depression, of panic attacks, of eating disorders, the list goes on. Madam Speaker, members of my party for a long time before I was in this place supported recommendations of adding terms like coercive control to the criminal code, and I'm sincerely grateful to see it in the bill today. However, I never thought that that was enough. I believe this bill is a start to see the injustice that this little girl faced never be repeated, and for so many other victims of domestic violence to see an outcome. We have the power in this place to change that. And while I support this bill, I also believe that imposing tough sentences on those who assault their spouse or partner is needed, while making it easier for victims to escape their abusers and rebuild their lives. And further amendments to the criminal code is needed so that it is an aggravating factor in sentencing for assault, and that mandatory minimum penalties of 2 years should be imposed. I hope that this conversation is a start to the much-needed broader reform to protect victims like Kira. Madam Speaker, I think you remember the Honourable Rona Ambrose introduced legislation in this House in 2017 that would require judges to undergo training with respect to sexual assault. That legislation eventually became law, and so should this bill. Yesterday, Kira's mother told me a story about an interaction she fondly remembered about her daughter. Jen said jokingly, "If you don't behave, I'm going to take you back to the baby store." And without hesitation, the rambunctious 4-year-old snapped back and said, "I'm going to bring you back to the grown-up store." Madam Speaker, we should listen to Kira's retort carefully. Because if we don't heed the warning right in front of us, if we don't relent on doing the right thing, if we allow domestic violence to go unchecked without using every single tool in the toolbox, if we let another child die senselessly, we should all be returned to the grown-up store, because this was entirely preventable. Kira should be 7 years old. Madam Speaker, I will end with this because I believe that we can ensure to have the tools in this place so it doesn't happen again. I think we can do that. And we should do it now. Madam Speaker, there have been discussions amongst parties, and if you seek it, I think you will find unanimous consent for the following: that notwithstanding any standing order or usual practice in this House, at the conclusion of the time provided for private members' business today, that C-233, an act to amend the Criminal Code and Judges Act, be deemed to have been read a second time and referred to the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Thank you, Madam Speaker.